I owe about $150,000 in student loans.
My credit score just went down 184 points.
I don't think paying back your debts is morally superior. I literally don't care.
What Trump is doing on student loans is literally going to crash the economy.
So they're bundling those student loans and then...
So the student loan debacle is getting worse. It is beyond the point of now people just not paying. It's almost to the point of a 2008 debt crisis. They have been stacking these loans and bundling them together, and now there's a mess if they don't pay. With 5 million people in the arrears on these things, and 38% of student loans are in default. And it's a real situation. I'm keeping my eye on it. Let's watch these videos. Some of these people, they're just refusing to pay. Watch this.
So yeah, I made a video about me owing student loans, right? I owe about $150,000 in student loans. I got 2 degrees. I got a bachelor's in biology and I got a master's in secondary education with an endorsement in clinical mental health counseling, right? I said, so y'all mean to tell me y'all gonna garnish my check? I'm trolling, right? I made that video last night. I never knew it was so many negative people that would comment on that video. I feel like my video reached the wrong side of TikTok. Like, just laugh. I'm not mad about it. I haven't paid these years in over 4 years.
Am I the only one really distracted by her eating right now?
After I graduated in 2020, you think I'm worried about it now? If they get it done and done. I ain't working in my degree because I put my kids first. I got a job that's going to accommodate my kids' schedule. But I was trolling. I thought it was funny. Like, I'm not mad about it. If you paid your student loan, kudos to you. You want a cookie? And to be honest, I feel like most of y'all that paid y'all student loans use y'all social media money. Y'all not taking no money out y'all worksheet to pay these doggone loans back. The interest on these loans ain't nothing but probably 7% or less. I'll pay my credit card out before I pay a doggone student loan. It'll get paid when it get paid. They in the firm, I think I'm good. But y'all too serious in the comments. Like, I don't even turn my comments off. I don't want to turn these off because y'all really doing too much. And they talking about you people. Who is you people? You been the R word now?
Comment down below what you think about all this. If you are in the arrears, are you in default? Are you having problems paying your student loans? Do you feel like the system sets you up to fail?
There's literally no legal way for you to get out of paying your student loans. You cannot. You are in a prison. It's the same as debtors prison. And I'm watching these people send their kids to debtors prison for jobs that they don't need to buy degrees for. And it's wild, but they've convinced them that they have to do that to get any good jobs. But the reality is very few jobs are going to be good enough to get them out of this.
This is my 3rd student loan video. I've commented in detail on just about everything. I want to hear your thoughts on this. As somebody that went in the Army to go to school, walked with a rucksack for hundreds of miles, spent time in the desert, in a war zone, lived in a metal shipping container. It was 125 degrees outside, all for college. And then I hear somebody, I would have loved to just done, 6 years of school for free and just send it off to the federal government to, I'm not paying. Does that infuriate people? I know it does me. And my wife worked real hard to pay off her student loans. We literally renovated an entire house to flip to pay for some student loans. I just don't think it's fair that some of us worked real hard and others didn't. They racked up tons of money and then they're blatantly saying it online.
I don't know what y'all about to do, but I just enrolled for another master's degree. I sure did. I'm like, you know what? I need to learn something new anyway. So, second master's, here I come. Student loans. I don't give a fuck.
Like oh, whatever. What are they going to do to me? Look, you can bankrupt credit cards. You can't bankrupt federal student loans. It's non-bankruptable. They have pigeonholed you into a debt hole. They wrapped it up and sold it to you as a student loan. And they used your labor as security. An unsecured debt secured by your labor for the rest of your life. So a lot of people believe that if you re-enroll into school that, you don't have to worry about paying for your student loans. You can go back into the deferment. Well, if you're in the rears, I don't think they'll let you take out another federal student loan. And you're blatantly hurting the system for everybody else. Now, this whole repayment thing, this whole garnish your wages and everything that's going on, that's for the people that are refusing to pay, just aren't paying. Everybody thinks that, the loan I took out 10 years ago is now the president's fault. Or 15 years ago is now this administration's fault. It wasn't the last one. So these politicians baked in a system to trap young people, secured by their debt. See, most mortgages, houses, are secured by the property. Well, a student loan is secured by you. It is secured by your labor. Then they took that debt, they wrapped it up, and then they sold it on the bond market. And then now, we're looking at a catastrophe if everybody decides not to pay. And everybody's bragging that they're not going to pay. Let me tell you, one day, these videos are going to come back to haunt you if you're sitting there bragging about not paying your student loans. The federal government has its ways.
I don't think paying back your debts is morally superior. I literally don't care that you grinded for over a decade and stretched yourself so thin and worked 2 jobs and missed out on kids' birthdays and missed out on funerals and missed out on your life. What is dwindling time in your life of mobility and good health in order to pay back, of all people, the federal government. You will never catch me working that hard for the federal government. Ever. Ever, ever, ever. There's so many people in my comments. Wait, I'm confused. I thought we were paying our student loans back. It's a loan, not a gift. Yeah, I literally don't care. Congratulations. You did. I'm not. And many people can't. And also the people that have been paying them back and are in good standing and trying to be a good citizen, quote unquote, because that's how we're measured, is how well we can pay back our debts when our own government is not even paying back our debts. And our own president owes the state of New York so much money that he literally can't even go there. And the fact that he owes other states so much money that he literally couldn't hold rallies. And that's why he had to use really obscure, weird third-party vendors in order to hold rallies in states. He's gone bankrupt 6 times. So yeah, your neighbor who's got 3 children and weighed down by student loans, who has to file for bankruptcy in order to continue to pay her student loans, is the one that's morally inferior. Same government that sends $8.8 billion at the drop of a hat across seas to support an extinction of an entire people. Same government who manipulates and uses our stock market to their own advantage and insider trades every day. Congratulations. You literally are living and dying to pay back the federal government, and it's never going to be me. The bootlicking is insane. It's a really, really weird hill to die on when you can't even afford eggs. That goes for all debts. That goes for houses. That goes for cars. We're weighed down by cars and car loans with high interest rates because we don't have public transport that's affordable and or accessible. Weighed down by mortgages. Let's not even talk about that. None of us are ever going to own homes ever again.
I don't know. That was all over the place. But comment down below with what you think she's right or wrong on. Look, none of this money's free. I would much rather pay for people's college than start all these wars and send all this money abroad and bail out every other country but ourselves. I get it, but you can't put student loans on board with somebody's mortgage. All debt in general. Those are pools of money that are totally different. I don't know where she thinks this money comes from. The student loan itself is an entitlement. It is a program of government money sent down to students to be able to go to school, and the government wants a return. It's got to be secured by something, and these politicians got together and created something called the student loan. And some of these loans are predatory. The interest rates are astronomical, at least in real estate. When you go to buy a house and you overpay, when you go to buy a house, there's an appraiser that comes out and says, this house is worth X, Y, and Z. Mr. Bank, don't give them more than this for the profit. In college, you can be 18 years old and you can go out there and sign up for this kitchen sink, knowing you are not going to be able to get a return on it. At 18, you don't know that. The university does. And these legislatures have created a system for you to lose, to shackle you to your labor for a program that they know is not worth anything, but they sold it to you. They didn't prove that you could get a job, with that degree. Many of these degrees are just made up. A lot of these courses, ask a professor, How many of those courses were just created to fill a billet for some criteria that some accreditation said that we'll give you credit for, that the legislature created a money pool to pay for, and you and the university just keeps upping their prices to get more and more money, whether it's private institutions or state. They're bloated with administration. And then they created the online course where their margins are huge. And it's adjunct professors doing most of the work. And they're all switching to online courses and charging you the same or more. The rabbit hole of the university is mind-boggling. But that being said, I don't believe that you should be able to just take out debt and not have to pay it back. Most of us that paid for ours, I would have loved to gone to law school. I'd have loved to gone to business school. I'd have loved to gone to Harvard or University of Georgia or Florida School of Law or Cumberland or some of these great schools. I would have loved to gone to those schools. But I knew I couldn't pay for it, so therefore I didn't go. And to pay for a master's degree, I put a rucksack on, picked up a rifle, went to war, did what they told me to do until I was able to get out. And that's what I had to do. But then you see some people that did nothing and they get everything. It really infuriates me.
Income-driven payment plans being ripped away from us. I want you to be wary of anybody who gets on here and is like, well, I paid off my loans in 2 years by just putting all my extra money towards my loans and being really disciplined. What they're not telling you is they're living at home rent-free with their parents for 2 years and didn't pay a fucking bill. Or they're married and their partner was covering their expenses so they could put all their money towards paying their student loans. No tea, no shade if that's you, but let's call it what it is. You didn't pay your loans off because you started making coffee at home and skipped Starbucks. You did it because somebody was covering your cost of living for 2 years. You're sure if I could put all of my money towards paying my student loans, they'd be paid off. But that's not reality. Unfortunately, I have these things called bills and I pay all of them, all by myself. As if the state of the world wasn't bad enough. Now you got bitches barking at you. Well, just stop going to dinner with your friends and you can pay off your loans. Blah, blah, blah. Shut up. I'm not interested in anything you have to say right now, unless it's literally, I'm sorry, the government keeps f***ing you in the ass. Okay, you're not being helpful, you're not being productive, you're making people feel bad for having student loans, you're just missing the whole f***ing point. Okay, I'm begging y'all to shut up. Before you click record, just...
Yeah, she looks like she's in a very nice place with nice clothes. And she's telling us about, oh, well, everybody must have student loans. So who are you to be talking about this? No, some of us don't. Some of us went to the trades. Some of us worked really hard, did some very dirty things to get an education. Not everybody has a mortgage. Some people work very hard to pay it off. And what does that say to all the rest of us that renovated houses, crawled underneath houses, got dirty, busted our knuckles, sweated, did things that were awful, cleaning septic tanks and warehouses and power washing houses and doing all the work, you know, running dump trucks, doing freight line, doing railheads, like climbing the top of towers to change light bulbs, all the things that all the rest of us did to go to school. Learn how to weld, all the hours working overtime to pay for school. And then somebody will sit there and be like, you know what? I'm not going to pay my student loans because that's not the way the world works. It's not the way it should work. Is you have to work hard to pay for these things.
What Trump is doing on student loans is literally going to crash the economy. And I'll use my personal situation to show you how. And if you're one of these people at this point who is rooting for the downfall of people who have student loan debt, you're going to find out real quick that when we go down, you're going to go down too, because that's how the economy works when no one can afford to buy and sell things to each other. Because this is the impact just on me of what he has done. My payment is going to more than quadruple. I went to school for public health. Never in a million years would I have gone to school for public health and taken out the amount of money that I had to take out to get here if income-driven repayment plans were not an option. And he just closed the application to all of those plans. So my payment will be going from a percentage, a somewhat manageable percentage of my income every month, to the amount that will pay off my loans in the next 10 years. 13 million people.
1,001 mistakes you made 10 years ago is not today's problem. You signed up for that. Yes. You did a degree program that was dumb, okay? And you knew you had to go into some type of program to get the loans down in order to pay for that. That's called a bad deal. You were sold a bag of goods that was not worth it. The university basically frauded you into paying all this money. Because you're not paying the money, you're looking at garnishment, or you're looking at some type of default, or your standard of living is going to change. But you couldn't afford that standard of living from the get. All this is subsidized by these income-driven repayment programs. They're subsidizing the education. Now, I've been very vocal about paying back your student loans, but I will also say many of these student loans were predatory. You were sold a bill of goods. These universities should be ashamed of themselves. Politicians that allow that to happen should be ashamed of themselves. There should be some type of auditor or appraiser on these educations to keep people from being able to go in all this debt. I've made many videos on this, and my opinion is slowly changing a little bit, but you still owe the money.
Similar to the 2008 housing crisis, like a tidal wave that's coming, because I'm like, okay, well, if all these kids are locked up in student loan debt and their parents are now like double strapped and their grandparents are tapped out too, one of the biggest groups that's taking out student loans is actually grandparents, because they've tapped the parents out, they've tapped the kids out, and they're going back for the grandparents. So you've got multiple loans and you got multiple generations mortgaged to these papers that have negative ROI for a lot of them, and were completely unnecessary and were taken out far too early. It is creating and is going to create a crisis of that 2008 recession, I believe, because you look at they have the slabs, the student loan asset-backed securities, which is exactly like the mortgage loan, like the mortgage crisis, where they had the tranches and they were all rated AAA. Did you know that?
So they're bundling those student loans and then selling those off.
Yeah. Yep. There's an entire securities market built on that. And the thing is, with the housing crisis, at least the mortgages, there was an asset to be seized, right? There was a house. Even if it was a worthless house, it was at least a house that the bank could sell, that could seize. There's nothing. There's nothing backing these loans but labor. That's it. It's the labor of the people who took them out. So it's backed by nothing. There's nothing to seize except for the labor of the people, the earnings of the people who took the loans out. Because you'll see, like, Discover will sell like a bundle of loans, so people will pay like billions of dollars more than they're worth, because they know, because the loans are bankruptcy exempt because of the Higher Education Act, that they can hunt those people to the ends of the earth, and they're going to have to pay it. It's crazy, and nobody sees it.
The debtor is slave to the lender, no matter what. They have taken a loan and chained you to a computer or a job for the rest of your life. That's what the government did in this. It is mind-boggling. And now we're starting to see the corruption behind what they did with the notes. See, in the real estate world, they did it. They crashed it. They got bailed out. Now they're about to do it in the student loan world. This is already in action. There's always a new playground for these politicians and bankers to keep playing at. They crash it. They bail it out with taxpayer money. Rinse and repeat. Next it'll be the automotive world. Next it'll be the aerospace world. We already saw them bail out the aircrafts, all the airlines. We've seen them bail out the automotive world. Rinse and repeat, because the car market's about to collapse too. This is just every so many years. They just keep doing it. And what does that do? Inflation, bail out, inflation, bail out, pump the system with more money. It's like clockwork, everybody.
I've officially been impacted by Trump's presidency today. Guess what happened? My student loan payment has been on an income-driven repayment plan, meaning that based on my income, they've decided what payment I can afford, and I agree with it. And then today I logged in for recertification, and they told me that my payment is actually going to be $950 more.
You couldn't pay back the note to begin with. You were not going to make enough money to pay for the note. How is that anybody's fault other than you? Except for the note was built for you to never pay it off. So this is like in the real estate world. When you have a property, you sell it owner financed. Many of these real estate guys know you will not pay for that property, right? They know that sooner or later they will get it back because the note was made for you to fail. High interest rate, terms maybe short, something in there baked in for you to fail. That's what these student loans are. Secured by your soul. You were going to fail to begin with because you weren't going to make enough money from that education to pay for the note. And all it is come and due. If you make the payments, it's not the president. Just make the payments. But if you don't make the payments, well, then that was a bad deal.
First, they took away the income-driven repayment plans, and now they're requiring everybody to pay back all of their student loans. And the Federal Reserve is coming after people, but that's going to hurt the medical industry the most. It is a perfect storm. It is all set up in a way that definitely will affect the medical field more than any other industry, because to be in the medical field, many people have to go through intense schooling, and a lot of that intense schooling is both expensive and time consuming. It's time consuming, so a lot of people cannot work at the same time that they're going to school. If they can, it's a job that they're holding before they have their degree, which probably doesn't pay as much. Second of all, schools are expensive. And because the schools are expensive, people expect to make a lot more money with the job that they have once they have their degree. But they don't have that money right now, or while they're going to school, or before they go to school. That's why they're going into the field. But that's also why they have to take out student loans to be able to afford the education, and they think, well, I'll be able to pay it back. The problem with that is that the schools are getting a lot more expensive. The price is going up. Everybody knows that. Everybody's been able to see that college tuition rates have been increasing a lot, especially within the last 10 years. But guess what hasn't been increasing a lot? Not nearly as much. The pay that you get for being in those medical field positions.
I will say this, I know a few doctors, and they told me if they had to do it over again, they would not do it. Especially chiropractors, any type of orthopedics. Between fighting with the bureaucracy, the insurance companies, starting their own practice, even working for a hospital, it is proven to be so stressful and chaotic. There's a reason why doctors have the highest suicide rate, the highest stress problems. Many of them are unhealthy because they're under so much stress. They work terrible hours. If we're not going to give them a career or the ability to make a lot of money, they can't pay for the debt of the education. Not to mention that it takes many years to get that education. Sometimes you're 30, 35 by the time you're done with going to school. And if you want a higher level, like you're a neurologist or some type of specialty, you got to go further and further and further. The only way I see this stuff working out, especially with nurses, we see a situation where universities crept right behind as wages went up. The cost of going to these schools went up. Universities marketed to everybody, if you go to our special school, you're going to make all this money, but you sign here, here, and here, and we'll get you right on your way. And for many, that was a trap, and they were stuck. Now, let's think about nurses. Let's think about all the other people that work in the hospital that need a higher degree, master's degree, like nurse practitioners, things like that. And then once they sign on that line, they're stuck. I mean, we're getting to the point where to pay off the student loan, you're so old. And who would want to do all this? It's almost becoming an Atlas Shrugged moment that they've built the system to the point where nobody wants to do it anymore. They're waking up to this being a trap. The only way I see this working out is AI is going to shorten the burden of what a doctor has to do or a nurse has to do. That if you are in any type of imaging, coding, administrative roles, or any type of pharmaceuticals, pharmacies, like the stress of having to know all these things that AI can do for you, maybe will shorten the window, but it'll also lose a lot of jobs. Anything to do with medical records, anything to do with AI structuring how it finds answers to solutions, or just helping a doctor figure out what the diagnosis is, to where they don't have to go to school so long. Because at some point, you can't go to school until you're 50. And then you're on a downhill decline intellectually to pay off all those student loans. There's got to be a breaking point, and I think we're getting there. Or we have some type of internal education, like used to, you just went and apprenticed somewhere, kind of like a residency. Maybe that's what we do. But the system is wild. Everybody was told from a young age, you got to go to college, you got to go to college, you got to go to college. And we're never taught in high school or in middle school that there's other options, that trades pay an awful lot of money. Some of the richest guys I know, concrete, roofing, plumbing businesses, electrical businesses, learning how to do things, welding, learning how to do things out there, linemen, all type of engineering, CAD drawers, designers, engineers, like there's all types of things you can do out there. Some without any education, some with certifications, some with a bachelor's degree. We got to get to where we're telling these people that these things exist. All these kids don't have to think they have to take out all these student loans for a basket weaving degree and then blame the government.
What happens to our healthcare system after this student loan thing kicks in? Truly. Because I can name on one hand the amount of nurses I know that have never taken out student loans. I know older nurses that I have worked with who have paid them off, and a lot of the times the older nurses are the ones who took the 2-year route and then eventually got their BSN. But they could start out as 2 years I haven't worked with an associate's nurse. I'm a hematology, oncology, bone marrow transplant, cross-trained CAR-T, you name it, oncology, chemotherapy, I've done it. In order to work at the hospitals I work at, you have to have a BSN. And honestly, I became a nurse in 2020. The AA degree that you can get in nursing, it's obsolete. It's obsolete. And I went straight for my BSN. And I was told by all of my conservative family members over and over and over again that I needed a 4-year degree. I needed a 4-year degree. And now I'm a dumbass for going to college. Which is like a crazy narrative. That's a crazy narrative switch. Anyway, what happens to our hospitals after this? The doctors that I have worked alongside with have over $500,000 worth of student loans. I know nurse practitioners with $250,000 because that's what it costs to get an advanced degree. Where'd you go? Where'd you go? School. College. What happens when we stop getting medicine from
the entitlement? You know, she's wearing scrubs. She is there to just say, you know what? You have to take out student loans. Look, the Army Nursing Corps allowed men and women to come in with a commission, pay for their education, give them a great job, and they learned a lot and got a lot of experience. The Army brought in, the Army was begging for neurologists, doctors, surgeons. They paid for all their, I knew a girl that was a surgeon at Fort Hood, and she was a neurologist. They paid for everything. They paid for everything for her to be there. She was a major. She had a great, job. She did her thing. She got a lot of experience. They paid for everything. The Navy does it. The Coast Guard, I think the Coast Guard does it. The Air Force does it. They all have nurse corps. You can go and go in the Army as a medic or the Navy as a corpsman or anything like that and get education. They have a physical therapy program. There's a lot of ways to become to pay for your school. A BSN, a 4-year degree, like in the state of Florida, you can just make a 3.0 and they'll pay for 75% of your tuition. Georgia, I think, has the same thing. Many of these states have programs. There's grants. I know a professor right now that's begging to pay for somebody's education to be a teacher. There's many ways. This is not I must go to the most expensive school and I have to take out student loans and screw the government, I'm never paying them back. That is just wrong. That's not the way a lot of us paid for our college. I have zero college debt because I put a rucksack on my back and I went in the Army. My dad was the same way. All the men in my family went in the military for the GI Bill. We were poor. That's all there was, but we found a way.
I want to help put your mind at ease a little bit regarding everything with student loans and repayment and collection and all that starting next week. First, if you're in default, you know you're in default. This is not something that's new. So all the people that's worried about, am I going to be garnished? You're probably not. If you're in default, you were in default before the pandemic. This is them resuming the collections on people who were already in default. So those people are aware. Out of the 43 million borrowers here in the U.S., I think 11% of people are in default, and those people know. They were reaching out to them before the pandemic. Since then, it's been basically a forbearance, and none of us have had to pay, so nobody has been like, you're not new into being defaulted. Not yet. I feel like a lot of what's scaring people is garnishments, because people don't understand the way garnishments work, but there is a legal process. And yeah, we know a lot of iffy stuff going on with this administration, but there still is a legal process to garnishing people. You have to send letters out, like you have to give people so many days to respond. You can't just hop up one day and be like, I'm going to garnish this person. It just doesn't work like that. It won't hold up. If you're worried about that and you've been receiving letters and they're telling you that it's coming to that stage, go ahead and call them. Go ahead and call them and see what you can work out. The repayment started back as of October. I think October last year. Before it gets to default, there's other stages. So first you're late. Then after, I think 90 days, you're delinquent, and that's when they can report it on your credit. And then after that, I think the next step is 270 days, which is 9 months before you're in default. So even if payments started back as of October, it hasn't been 9 months yet. So you should still be in that window to where you're not in default status. So reach out and see what you can do, because usually with any kind of creditor, they want some money over no money. So if you call them and it's like, this is what I can pay, they'll usually work out a payment arrangement to be like, okay, you can pay this amount for these many months. If you stick to this, it can get you out of default status. It used to be where you could get, and I know a lot of stuff is changing, but you could consolidate consolidate. So it was consolidation, rehabilitation. See if forbearance is an option. There's deferments. There used to be a thing called hardship situation where basically they would ask you questions and see how much you could pay and they would take whatever. So I would say call and see what options you have now, because a lot of what's going.
That's with anything. Same way with car notes, everything. Try to negotiate with the bank. Don't just ghost them. Don't be that person say, I'm never going to pay it back. There's always options. And remember, I'm not a lawyer. Most of these student loans are not bankruptable. So don't think you're just going to like get out of it. I think the future, you're going to see them start attaching these notes to real estate. I think you're going to start seeing judgments against people. And I even think one day they're going to take your passport, because why would they let people skip the country and not pay for their student loans? The government has a way to get you in a million different ways. Don't mess with this. They'll run your credit into the ground. You'll never be able to get an apartment. You'll never be able to get a car. You'll never be able to buy a house. You've got to have credit. And once your credit is gone, you're in trouble. Now, there is a point. If you're a young person out there, there is a point where you don't need credit anymore. Just like Dave Ramsey said. When you start out life, you need a credit. You got to be able to get an apartment. Your employer probably going to run your credit. If you need a top secret clearance or anything like that, you need credit. But you got to be able to get an apartment. You got to be able to save money. Once you save money, you got to be able to buy a house. Once you bought the house, you probably don't need credit as much. Okay, if you don't operate with credit, we don't do debt. Debt is terrible. You're learning right now, debt is terrible. It is the handcuff to the computer, okay? It's the handcuff to your job. Once you pay off the house and you put money in the bank, you don't really need credit anymore, okay? Like, you can freeze your credit. I froze mine. I don't need my credit anymore. I can buy anything I want to, almost, without credit. That's where you want to be. You want to be debt-free. You want an emergency fund. You want a paid-for house. Life's easy. Life's easy once you get to there. So get to there. Don't listen to all these people saying debt is smart. You know, debt is great if it cash flows. No, debt is risk. It is a broadsword. It cuts you just as much as it cuts anything else. Understand that. Understand.
In favor of forcing people against their will to pay off college debts. Now, I'm assuming you probably have a college debt, a student loan of your own. So you're in favor of forcing people to pay off your debts because you don't want to take responsibility for your actions. Okay, fine. I'm in favor of forcing you to pay off my home loan debt because I don't feel like paying it off. So I think what you should do is send me a percentage of your check every time you get paid.
For sure. Like, it's not fair for all of us to pay for other people. And you're like, oh, well, yes, you do. Okay. All these student loan programs are almost like entitlements. They are taking a pool of money from the taxpayer. They're giving it out at a rate of return. Okay. And this is the number one asset for the federal government, is for you to pay on those notes every month, okay? And then when you don't pay, that's where we get inflation from, for bailing out all of these good idea fairy problems, okay? But I will say, in closing, that some of these credits, some of these loans were predatory. They got you when you were young. They change you to a computer with debt most will never pay off. They kept you from being able to buy a house. They kept you from buying a car. And then when they got in trouble, they knew this stuff was coming due in the past. Okay, 4, 5, 6 years ago, we all knew that the student loan crisis was coming. And these politicians said, well, I don't want to get caught with it. Let's punt it to the next administration. And then this administration will try to refinance it and punt it to the next administration. And these politicians will try to refinance it out. They'll try to make everybody happy, but it's still a problem. And these notes are getting bundled and sold off on the bond market, and the next thing we'll know, we're upside down and we're bailing out the student crisis, okay? The stuff is coming whether you like it or not. People have to be aware of this, and if you think you're going to get away with not paying for your student loans, Supreme Court already ruled that they can't just forgive them, okay? That's like a big thing. And these politicians are buying votes by saying they're going to do it. So don't be in that category. Don't take out student loans if you can absolutely help it. Work your way through, or just don't go get that degree, and pretty soon that market will reset itself. I'm already seeing special loans in real estate for doctors and lawyers because they've got to incentivize people to go do that. I don't know. They're going to have to change the standard or reset it or something, because It's unsustainable. But that's all I got, everybody. Don't forget to like and subscribe, comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.